The boxes arrived before the sun went down. I want to describe the sequence because the sequence is everything, because what happened on the first evening of our new home was not a single event, but a series of events that arrived in the specific order of something that had been planned. And the planning was the revelation before the words were even spoken. My name is Josephine. I am 32 years old. The house, our house, the house that Nathan and I had saved for across 6 years of 2 incomes and one shared specific dream of a home that was fully ours, had been in our possession for exactly 7 hours when the van pulled up. Not a car. A van. A rented cargo van that my mother-in-law Sylvia drove with the particular composed authority of a woman who has decided something and is executing the decision without pausing for negotiation. She stepped out first. Then her sister Claudette. Then Claudette's husband Warren. Then Sylvia's youngest daughter Trina, who was 19 and who carried a duffel bag with the specific casual ease of someone who considers herself a guest rather than an interloper. Then Trina's boyfriend Marcus, who I had met once. Then Sylvia's brother Deshawn, who I had met twice. Then Deshawn's teenage son, who I had not met at all. 7 people. And behind them, in the cargo van, visible through the open rear doors, boxes. I stood on the front porch of my new home. I looked at the boxes. Nathan was inside. I called him to the door. He came. He looked at the van. At the 7 people. At the boxes. His expression had the particular quality of a man who has received information that he was aware was coming, but that has arrived faster and larger than he had prepared himself to acknowledge. Nathan, I said. It's just temporary, he said. The word temporary landed in the space between us with the specific quality of a word that is doing something other than what it appears to be doing, the specific performing of impermanence, when the boxes in the van have the weight of permanence. He went inside. He sat in my chair. The chair I had chosen for the sitting room. He said, "This house is big enough for all of them." I looked at the chair he was sitting in. I looked at the van. I made a decision. The chair matters. I want to explain why the chair matters because without understanding the chair, the story is only about a house, and it is not about a house. It is about a self. I had found the chair at an estate sale 14 months before we closed on the house. It was a wingback, dark green velvet, slightly worn at the armrests in the specific way of something that has been well used by someone who loved it, with the particular upright quality of a piece of furniture that had been designed for the person sitting in it to feel that they were in the position of someone who had arrived somewhere deliberate. I had bought it for $47. I had had it reupholstered, the same dark green velvet, slightly richer than the original, by a woman named Mrs. Paulson who ran an upholstery shop 3 streets from our apartment and who had done the work with the particular craft attention of someone for whom every piece of furniture is a conversation with whoever is going to sit in it. I had been storing the chair in Mrs. Paulson's shop for 3 months because our apartment did not have room for it and because I had known, with the specific patient certainty of someone who has been planning a home for years, exactly where the chair was going to go in the sitting room of the house we had not yet bought. When we moved in that morning, I had placed the chair myself. Not anywhere in the specific corner of the sitting room that faced both the window and the room entrance, where the morning light would arrive at the right angle and where a person sitting in it would have the particular quality of visibility and privacy simultaneously. Nathan had sat in it without asking. Not from malice, from the specific unthinking quality of a man who has not yet understood that the chair in that corner belongs to something more than the room. He had then used it as the seat from which to announce that 7 people and a cargo van of boxes were welcome in the house we had spent 6 years saving for. I looked at the chair. I looked at him in it. I thought, the chair is a data point. The chair is telling me something about this moment that I need to hear. Sylvia Patterson Webb was 58 years old and had the particular quality of a woman who had organized her family around herself so completely and for so long that she had stopped distinguishing between her authority and her family's agreement with it. She was not a cruel woman. This is important, and I want to say it clearly because the story requires honesty about all of its people, and Sylvia was not a cruel woman. She was a woman who loved her children in the specific way of someone for whom love and management were the same action, and who had never been given a reason to believe that her management extended only to the edges of her own household. She had been in Nathan's life for 34 years. She had been in mine for 4. Across those 4 years, she had been the specific kind of mother-in-law who was not hostile and who was not warm in the uncomplicated way, and who was instead the particular kind of presence that requires constant navigation. Always slightly too much in the room, always slightly ahead of the conversation, always arranging things without asking whether the arrangement was wanted. I had navigated. I had been patient in the specific way that patience is practiced by a woman who has decided to give a relationship the time it needs to develop into something better than what it currently is. The van was telling me that the time had expired without the development I had been waiting for. Nathan had told me, in the weeks before we closed on the house, that his mother was having some difficulties with her housing situation. Her landlord was not renewing her lease. She needed some time to figure out next steps. I had said, "How long?" He had said, "A few weeks." I had said, "Nathan, I need that to be a real number." He had said, "I'll talk to her." A month, maybe 6 weeks. The van had 7 people in it. 6 weeks and 7 people were not the same thing as what he had described. I went back inside. I went to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I stood at the kitchen counter and I drank it slowly, and I thought about what I was going to do. Not from anger, from the particular clear-eyed thinking of a woman who has just understood that the conversation she needed to have is the conversation she has been delaying, and that delaying it further is going to cost her more than having it now. What I did first was not confrontational, and it was not concessive. What I did first was practical. I went to the sitting room where Nathan was still in my chair and where Sylvia had begun directing her 7 guests in the specific way of a woman who considers directing people the natural expression of being in a space. "Sylvia," I said. She looked at me. "Before anyone brings boxes inside," I said, "I need to have a conversation with Nathan privately. Can you give us 20 minutes on the porch?" She looked at Nathan. Nathan looked at me. "Of course," she said, with the particular composed grace of a woman who has been asked to do something reasonable and who is complying while simultaneously communicating that she considers the reasonableness itself an imposition. The 7 guests went to the porch. I closed the sitting room door. I sat on the ottoman across from the wingback chair. "Nathan," I said. "Josephine. I need you to listen to me before you speak," I said. "This is not a negotiation. This is me telling you something that is true and that you need to hear clearly before we have any other conversation." He was quiet. 7 people, I said. "You told me a month. Possibly 6 weeks. 1 person, your mother, needing time to find new housing. What is on the porch is 7 people and a cargo van. Those are different things. It's just..." "Nathan," I said, "I need you to tell me honestly. Not what you hope. What you know. How long have you known that this was what was being planned?" He looked at his hands. "She called me last week," he said. "Last week," I said. "She said she needed to bring some family because she couldn't afford separate arrangements for everyone while she sorted things out, and she asked if there was room, and I said..." "You said yes," I said. "I said I'd talk to you," he said. "But then..." "You didn't talk to me," I said. "No," he said. I sat with this. "Nathan," I said, "I am going to tell you what is going to happen tonight, and I need your agreement before I open that door." "All right," he said. I told him. The terms I set on the evening of the first night were not punitive, and they were not soft. They were the specific, clear terms of a woman who has been trained as a contracts attorney and who understands that the absence of clear terms is itself a term, the specific term that says everything is negotiable by whoever has the most leverage in the moment, which in a house with 7 unexpected guests and a husband who has agreed to something without consent is not the woman who paid half the mortgage deposit. I had paid half the mortgage deposit. This was relevant. I had been practicing contracts law for 8 years. This was also relevant. I opened the sitting room door. I asked Sylvia to come in. I asked Nathan to remain seated. I did not sit in the wingback chair. I stood. "Sylvia," I said, "I want to welcome you and your family. I understand the situation with your housing has been difficult, and I understand that Nathan has indicated there is space here." She began to speak. "I'm not finished," I said. Gently. Precisely. She stopped. "There are some things that need to be clear between all of us before anyone unpacks anything," I said. "The first is the duration. I am prepared to offer 6 weeks. Not open-ended. Not a few weeks. 6 weeks from tonight, with a commitment from you and from Nathan that the 6 weeks is the outside limit and that during those 6 weeks there is active and documented effort to secure alternative arrangements. Documented, she said. Yes, I said. I will need to see that effort. The second thing I said. The house has 4 bedrooms. Nathan and I occupy the primary bedroom. The remaining 3 bedrooms are available for your family for the 6 weeks. Common spaces are shared. Household expenses are shared proportionally. I will provide a breakdown of what proportional means in this context. Sylvia looked at Nathan. The third thing I said is that every person in this house understands that this home belongs to Nathan and to me, and that the decisions made about this home are made by Nathan and me together. Not by anyone else. Not with anyone else's input unless we request it. Sylvia was quiet. Those are fair terms, Nathan said. He said it clearly. Without hesitation. It was the most important thing he said that evening. I called Patricia on the second morning. Patricia Osei was 35 years old, Ghanaian American, and had been my closest friend since we were both 23 and starting at the same firm and discovering that we were each other's specific kind of necessary. She was also, incidentally, the most organized person I had ever known. The particular focused organization of someone who had grown up in a household that required organization as a survival skill and who had developed it into a professional art. She answered on the first ring. Tell me, she said. I told her. All of it. The van. The 7 people. The boxes. The chair. The terms. Nathan sang the most important thing he said. She listened with the complete attention she always gave to things that required it. When I finished, she said, the documentation. You said you needed documented evidence of effort on alternative housing. Yes, I said. Do you have a system for tracking it? She said. I was thinking a weekly check-in, I said. Weekly is fine, she said. But you also need a written agreement. A simple one. 1 page. Signed by Nathan, signed by you, with the terms you described. Nothing legally complex, just the specific clarity of a document that everyone has agreed to and whose existence means that the agreed terms are not subject to later reinterpretation. You think I should put it in writing, I said. I think, she said, that you already know you should put it in writing. You've been a contracts attorney for 8 years. You know what the absence of a written agreement produces. Yes, I said. Josephine, she said. Yes, I said. The chair, she said. I know, I said. You need to take it back, she said. Not dramatically, practically. The specific practical observation of a woman who understood that the chair was not about the chair. Yes, I said. Tonight, she said. Yes, I said. And Nathan needs to understand why, she said. Not as a symbol. As a specific thing. He sat in your chair and announced that 7 people were moving in. He needs to understand what those 2 things have in common. I sat with this. I'll talk to him tonight, I said. Good, she said. Patricia, I said. Yes, I said. Thank you, I said. That's what I'm here for, she said. Nathan agreed to the written agreement without resistance. This surprised me. Not because I had expected a fight, because I had expected the particular negotiation of a man who was caught between 2 loyalties and who would spend some time trying to find a version of the agreement that satisfied both before arriving at the version that was accurate. He did not negotiate. He read the single page I had prepared, the 6 weeks, the bedrooms, the shared expenses, the decision-making authority, and he picked up the pen. Before you sign, I said, I need you to tell me that you understand what you're signing. I understand, he said. Tell me what you understand, I said. He set down the pen. He looked at me. I understand that I made a decision without you, he said. I understand that the decision was wrong not because the decision itself was necessarily wrong, but because it was made without you. I understand that this house is ours and that ours means both of us, and that both of us means I don't say yes to 7 people in a cargo van without talking to the person whose name is on the mortgage with mine. I looked at my husband. Yes, I said. That is what you understand. He signed. I signed. I made 2 copies. I gave him one. I kept one in the folder with the mortgage documents in the file cabinet in the home office, the room I had claimed as mine on the morning of move-in and that had not been offered to the 7 guests, because I had established its purpose before the van arrived. That evening I moved the wingback chair. Not out of the room, to the specific corner where I had placed it on the morning of move-in, the corner that faced both the window and the room entrance, where the morning light arrived at the right angle. Nathan watched me move it. He did not offer to help. He understood, without being told, that this was something I needed to do myself. I sat in the chair. He stood in the doorway. "That's your chair," he said. "Yes," I said. "I shouldn't have sat in it," he said. "No," I said. "I'll remember that," he said. "I know you will," I said. The 6 weeks were the specific difficult weeks of 7 people in a house that had been built for 2, and that was adjusting to the temporary architecture of a shared space with the particular creaking quality of something that is doing more than it was designed for. I want to be honest about the 6 weeks because the story requires honesty, and because the 6 weeks were not uniformly difficult. They had the specific texture of something complex. Which is to say, they had hard moments and unexpected moments and moments that produced information I had not anticipated. Claudette, who was Sylvia's sister, was a very good cook. She made breakfast on the second Saturday with the particular focused pleasure of someone for whom cooking is not a chore, but a specific expression of care. And she set it on the table for everyone with the natural ease of someone who had been feeding families her whole life. I ate the breakfast. It was the best biscuits I had eaten in years. Claudette and I talked in the kitchen afterward, carefully at first, and then with the specific warmth of 2 women who have discovered that they can be honest with each other. She said, "I want you to know I didn't know it was going to be 7 of us." She called everyone at the same time. "I know," I said. "You handled it well," she said. "I handled it clearly," I said. "That's different." "Maybe," she said. "But in this family, clear is rare enough that it might as well be excellent." I looked at her. "Claudette," I said, "are you helping her look for housing?" "Every day," she said. "I have a list of 3 places we're visiting next week." "Thank you," I said. She looked at me. "Thank you," she said, "for the 6 weeks." Trina, the 19-year-old, left on day 18. She had found a room share with a friend, and she left with her duffel bag and a brief hug and the particular bouncing energy of someone for whom a situation has resolved in her favor without having been a burden in the first place. Marcus left the same week. Deshawn's son left on day 22 when school required his return. By the end of week 4, the 7 had become 4. By week 5, it was Sylvia, Claudette, and Warren. On day 41, Sylvia signed a lease. Sylvia found me in the sitting room on her last morning. It was a Sunday. She had signed the lease on Friday. The new apartment was available Monday. Her things were mostly packed. The boxes that had arrived in the cargo van had been repacked in the specific careful way of someone who has taken stock of what they brought and who has decided what they are taking forward. She came into the sitting room at 7:15 a.m. I was in the wingback chair. She sat across from me on the couch that faced it. She had the particular quality of a woman who has been organizing herself for a conversation and who has arrived at the room where the conversation needs to happen. "Josephine," she said. "Sylvia," I said. "I'm going to say something," she said. "And I need you to hear the whole thing before you respond." "All right," I said. "I came here on that first night," she said, "with 7 people and a van because I have spent 58 years being the person who solves problems by moving toward them with as much force as I have available. It has worked in my family. It has worked because the people in my family have always let it work." She looked at her hands. "You did not let it work." "No," I said. "You set terms," she said. "Yes," I said. "In my family that does not happen," she said. "When I need something, the family adjusts." Nathan has always adjusted. "Nathan and I are a family," I said. "And our family makes decisions together." She looked at the chair I was sitting in. "He told me about the chair," she said. I waited. "He told me that he sat in it without asking and announced 7 people and that when you moved it back you needed to do it yourself." She was quiet for a moment. "He said he understood why." "Yes," I said. "I didn't understand that," she said. "At first. I thought it was excessive. A chair is a chair." "Yes," I said. "But he explained it to me," she said. "He said, 'Mama, it's not about the chair. It's about whether this is her home or just a house she lives in.' And I thought about that for 2 weeks." "What did you decide?" I said. She looked at me. "I decided," she said, "that I need to know you better. Here is what I kept from a cargo van on the first evening and 7 people and a chair and 6 weeks and a Sunday morning conversation. I kept the chair. I sit in it on Sunday mornings before the house fully wakes, and I drink my coffee, and I look at the specific quality of the morning light that arrives through the east-facing window at the angle I had planned for before we closed on the house. The chair is where it belongs. I put it there. Nobody put it there for me. This is the most important thing about the chair. Not what it looks like or what it cost after the reupholstering, but the specific fact that I placed it with intention, and that when the intention was disrupted I restored it myself, and that Nathan watched and understood and has not forgotten. I kept the written agreement. Not because it was needed. The 6 weeks ended on schedule and with more grace than they began. I kept it because the writing of it was the moment Nathan said the most important thing he has said in our marriage, that our means both of us, and that both of us means decisions are made together. The agreement is in the file cabinet with the mortgage documents. I look at it occasionally not as evidence, but as the specific record of a night when something was said clearly enough to be written down and signed and kept. I kept Claudette's biscuits. Not the biscuits themselves, the understanding that difficult situations contain people who are not the difficulty, and that the dignity of any situation is found in seeing the people accurately rather than through the frame of the difficulty they arrived with. Claudette made breakfast for 14 people on a Saturday morning because feeding people was her specific form of love. I ate the breakfast. I am glad I ate the breakfast. I kept what Sylvia said on her last morning, that a chair is not a chair. She said it as the thing she had initially believed before Nathan explained what the chair was actually about. When she arrived at the understanding that the chair was about whether this was my home or just a house I lived in, she said she needed to know me better. We have dinner monthly now. The dinners are not easy and they are not resolved, and they are more honest than any conversation we had in the 4 years before the cargo van. I am 32 years old. 7 people arrived at my house on the first night. I poured a glass of water. I set terms. I moved the chair back myself. The house is mine. It has always been mine. Nathan knows this now. So does Sylvia. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever had to establish that a space was yours in a moment when someone was arranging it without asking, I want to hear about it in the comments. What did you have to move back into place? Stories like this one stay alive because people carry them forward. Share this with someone who needs it today. And if you would like more stories told honestly, the way things worth keeping deserve to be told, subscribe. We will be here. The end.